and welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures That Outperform. We have an incredible series going on how to lead from anywhere, and we're making this super easy for you because we're giving you the norms you need to operationalize. You may not use every one of these. Maybe in your culture, certain things run great. You don't need this, but these norms are there for you to use to roll out. And norms are important because norms control the culture, not people. And so this is super important to understand right at the outset that when you have a norm, if somebody violates the norm, they don't go attack the person for doing something wrong. They say, hey, we have a norm here of X, we don't do that around here. Here's what we do. And it just depersonalizes everything. And that's ultimately what's so powerful about this. So today on episode 3 of this series, we're going to talk about how do you create a safe culture? It is up to the leaders to make sure it's a safe culture. You have a lot of remote workers. You've got to make sure that psychological safety, emotional safety is there. And we're going to go through a set of norms and things leaders should be doing, but they've got to have their people's back. And that's why this image is so important, Tara?
Yeah. I think this image is spot on because as a leader, you're taking the brunt of whatever is happening. You're getting all the rain coming on you, not on
That's
your
right.
people. You want to be the one that's, people have to know that you've got their back. And literally in this picture is what we're depicting here, but it's so true. People need to know that they can feel safe under your leadership, that you're going to cover them. You're not going to leave them out to dry. You're not going to throw them under the bus the first time something
Right.
happens. You're going to be the first person to fall on the sword if there's a problem. You don't want to just start hanging your people out to dry because you're really not being a great leader when you do that. And so I think this picture really does show something that we're trying to convey with all of these norms, that as a leader, you have to be the one that's holding the umbrella in the rain. You have to be the one that's hovering over and protecting your people. You have to be the one that's removing all the roadblocks and making sure that people can do their job well.
Yeah, people don't do what you say, they do what you do. So you're acting out exactly and modeling the things that you want people to do in your organization. And the norms help you to explain why things matter. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk about, how embracing these behavioral norms is going to allow you to build basically a psychologically safe culture, because this is where interpersonal trust begins. It's very important that you have interpersonal trust, especially when you have a lot of remote workers. And not only do they have to trust you, they got to trust one another. So you got to weave them all together. And you've got to make their human experience very, very, very important. And so, Tara, we'll kick off here, I guess.
Yeah.
Emotional safety.
So trust starts with that emotional safety. People have to feel like they can trust you with their career. They can trust you with the direction that the organization is going in, but more particularly the direction their team is going in. So in order to build this culture of trust and safety, you really have to stop, and I mean immediately squash it. If people start talking behind each other's backs, if they are saying things that are not quite so nice about people, I know it's easy to get caught up in that, but you really do have to squash that and go back to that whole saying, if you don't have anything good to say, you say nothing at all. You really don't want to have this backbiting going around the organization where everybody is talking about everybody, because it just erodes the trust right from the start, and it makes people feel unsafe. They feel like, if you're talking to me about somebody else, then who are you talking about me to?
Exactly
So
right.
you know
On the
that that
money. They
person,
know right away
yeah,
that
you know that
they're
person is
eventually going to
talking
be the
about
victim.
you to somebody else if they're talking to you about somebody else. So you want to make sure you squash that right away. It's just not healthy.
And this is where the norm has to regulate the behavior of the people. And so when that person is in a situation where this person starts bad mouthing somebody else, they say, hey, it's not acceptable to do that here. Here's the norm.
Yeah.
Everybody's asked to follow this norm. And so it's very important. And then we
Yes.
get the trustworthiness. Now, this is about everybody. And certainly, I've seen this many times in organizations where somebody raises an issue at a meeting and it's directly about another individual, what they did or didn't do, um, and they blindside them and ambush them at the meeting. And I've seen it just so many times, which is why you just can't blindside people. It destroys the relationships, destroys that feeling of psychological safety. People are going to be on edge going to meetings. You've got to actually put a stop to that and prevent it from ever happening by operationalizing this norm, talking about it with your people, saying, hey, here's how we operate. We operate in a very productive, cohesive way. And that's why this norm really matters, because this crushes relationships and destroys
Yeah.
the feelings of trust in the organization.
Yeah. You don't want people kind of doing things so that they can sabotage their coworker and make themselves look good. You
Yeah,
know, that
horrible.
that I think kind of leads right into this whole idea of transparency. So I'm not operating with some hidden agenda. I'm not trying to make other people look bad so I look good. That is just the worst. I
Mhm.
cannot express that enough. Holding back information from people and not being completely transparent with them is just one of the worst things you can do as a leader, as a coworker, because you're really operating with one hand behind your back. And as much as we like to think that we're fooling people, we're really not. People
We're not
know
fooling
we're
anybody.
not fooling anybody. People know when you have one hand behind your back and you're just hiding information from them. You're not being completely honest with them. You are just kind of, you've got your own agenda going, but you're not telling that person. People know it's a vibe that you give off when you're operating with that
Yep.
dual mindedness. You give off a certain vibe, and people can pick up on that. And it really causes a great deal of frustration. So,
And the vibe is so important because the vibe
yes,
runs through everything. People talk about behavior. The vibe is a whole area of its own and it affects everything. It's warmth.
yes,
It's the negative things you're doing that are coming through, even though you're trying to mask it. People just
yes.
know.
And the other thing that's just a horrible thing to do is to try to filter out what you think people need to know. And you make everything a need to know basis.
Yeah.
So people need to know if something is going to affect them, whether it's good or bad. They need to know that. So don't be that leader that's trying to filter out information and judging for people what you think they need to know, because often you're wrong. People need more information than you think they need, and it will create this distrust in the organization and with you as an individual. They'll stop trusting you, which in turn will make them stop trusting the organization. So you don't want to put people in that situation where they have to choose, where they have to feel like, I can only choose myself,
Yeah.
because we're just wired that way. Every single time we're going to choose ourselves for survival.
Yeah. I mean, this is really important. I've seen plenty of people, usually leaders, but not always, operate with hidden agendas. And
Mhm.
you got to have a norm that says we don't do that, and people should be called out when they're doing it. No
Yeah.
question about it. And then, this whole notion of emotionally threatening behaviors, going off and really tearing somebody down, saying things that are very inappropriate or demeaning to other people. This type of, these threatening behaviors just can't exist. Nasty stuff. There are people who are always, I guess, the negative people who want to bring out the best and want to tear everybody down so they can feel bigger. The reality is you've got to stop that and you've got to have a norm that says, no, we don't ever do this. People hiding, on an online meeting are more likely to do this stuff because they feel safer because they're not actually physically present with the other people. And very simple, just to have a norm that controls that. So very important.
Yes. And honesty. Honesty is always the best policy.
Yeah.
It really is. It's not just cliche. You want to tell the truth about things, both good and bad. And you never want to hide things from people. I can remember being on a team where I was responsible for reporting defects. And I was young, just out of college, super
Mm,
excited. But I was on this team where they were not being very honest.
mm,
And as a result, the reports that I was providing weren't being filtered so that only a certain amount of information was being shared. And eventually that truth came out. And so people started looking at me and saying, well, what else is she hiding? Why
Oh
hasn't she
no.
told us about all these things?
Oh, they
And I
got
pulled out my reports and I was like, it's been in my report. I don't know what happens after I give it to my leaders, but it's been in my report.
good
And
for
I can
you.
just remember how I felt that day. Like, I cannot believe that now my integrity is being questioned because my leaders have left me exposed. And they didn't come to my aid. They didn't try to say, no, it was in her
Horrible
report.
leaders,
We didn't
horrible.
think it was important. I can remember those feelings, right? So I remember how people made me feel. And it's such a great Maya Angelou quote about that. People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And
Yeah,
honesty is one of those things when you're not honest with people, you give them a bad feeling that hangs around and it will not
yeah,
go away. They're going to always have that kind of in the back of their minds of how you made them feel when you were dishonest with them. So don't do that as a leader. You want to make sure you're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. Like, it
yeah.
really is just going to help you in the long run to just tell the truth. It
Oh,
may
big
be
time.
good, it may be bad, but whatever it is, just own it as a leader, own it. And say, hey, this is bad. I know this is bad, but this is the situation. And most of the time, people can understand it. They may not like it, but at least they'll understand it and they'll respect you for being honest with them.
Yeah. And what you see in corporations is usually the sin of omission. People don't, they leave stuff out that's actually
Yeah.
really important, like leaving some of the test failures out of your report.
Right.
Rather
Right.
than saying everything's perfect, they just kind of, paint a better picture than reality. So, you gotta have this norm where people have to, share the stuff fully, even if it feels a little bit unpleasant at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so next week, we're going to move on to another area that really is also tied into this whole notion of psychological safety, which is organizational trust. And this is about fairness and equality in the organization, somebody knowing if they do a good job, they can succeed. And so we'll get into that. We're here every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. This is going to be a very, very good series. You're going to have tons of norms coming out of this that you can use and put to use in your organization right away. So
Yes.
this is the secret sauce, folks. You do this, you're going to have a great place, no doubt about it. So hope you could join us. See you then.